Good thing not. Record. Okay. Let's see. Exit full screen. Anybody know how to pull a picture up here?
Yeah, yeah, that one.
Yeah, this one.
And then hit the full screen down in the bottom right.
There, like that?
Yeah, you good?
Technical genius. Somebody had to show me how to upload video on the LinkedIn the other day. You know, the little camera, right? Yeah. Well, next to that, there's a video camera. I've never even looked for a video camera on LinkedIn. All right. So today, Craig and I were talking, and Shelly were talking about this class, and to try to, I guess, comprise this Oreo world into one class is virtually impossible, and we don't want to just, you know, force feed everybody a fire hose here. So we're going to touch base on the main topics today to get your business started in Oreo, or kind of maybe a refresher course for some of you. So things that will get you going in Oreo, how to fill out these contracts, who the players are in the field when you're seeing some of these auction companies and all this stuff. Does it make sense? Mm-hmm. So what I always like to do is just take a little bit of a poll to see. Just raise your hand if you have any experience in Oreo as either the buy side or the sell side. Anybody? A couple of people, all right. On the buy side, is it mostly? Do we have any Oreo listing agents in the room at all? Okay. So what I'm going to do is explain. Now, some of this might be repetitive for you guys. If it is, I apologize, but we're going to try to get through as much as we possibly can today. The thing that I find that really works the best is a Q&A session at the end. That makes sense. And questions that you have, there are no dumb questions, believe me, especially in this world. Right?
Will we have a link to the slides if you show the slides, or?
Yeah, this is the only slide for me.
Okay.
And I think Craig will be putting this on Impact Group USA. Okay. Is everybody a member of Impact Group USA on Facebook? Mm-hmm. Impact Group USA agents, and also builders. If you're not, go ahead and sign up for that when you get a chance. Builders and Impact Group USA agents, because a lot of the classes that we do and a lot of the training that we do and a lot of the EXP Explain stuff is on there recorded for you guys, and y'all can just grab it and send it out. So was anybody signed up for the last class?
I was, yeah.
I apologize for that. I broke a tooth. And I'll just share a little bit of one thing with you. We're all EXP, right?
Yeah.
She XP. Don't know. All right. You know what's paying for my new tooth? Rev share. Does anybody know how expensive a crown is?
Yes.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Rev share. 22nd of the month. Don't even have to worry about it. All right. Come on in. And you introduce yourself real quick.
I'm Stephanie. Wait, I'm sorry.
That's right. All right. So do you have any experience with Oreo on the buy side or the sell side?
No.
Okay. All right. So let's just jump right in here. Okay. And if I go too fast or I go too slow, just kind of, you know, obviously start yawning or something. If I'm going too fast, just stop me. Stop me at any time with any questions if y'all need to. All right. So let's define what REO is. Real estate owned. Right? Because I get this question a lot. Difference between Oreo, difference between that and short sales, loss mitigation. Is it in foreclosure, not in foreclosure, pre-foreclosure, whatever it is. Okay.
Oh.
So the definition of Oreo, real estate owned, term applied to foreclosed properties where ownership is transferred to the bank or lender. Specifically, that's it. Where it's transferred to the bank or lender. That is the term that defines Oreo. Okay. If a third party is involved, it's not a foreclosure property. That's very, very important. I'll get to that in a second. Okay. So the way it happens is loan default, the homeowner borrower defaults on loan, fails to make their payments. Technically, they are in default on 31 days. Now, I am not let me be perfectly clear with you guys. I am not an attorney, all right? So the opinions that I'm giving you today come from years and years and years of handling these properties and being educated on these properties, right? So 31 days is technically in default. People really don't start getting paid attention to a whole bunch in the default process until they hit about 90 days, right? 90 days late, they just kind of start figuring out what's going on with you, okay? The foreclosure lender initiates legal proceedings, lists pendants, or a notice of default. Those are typically the first forms that go out for somebody that's in default. They receive that, then they know that the process is started, okay? Against borrower to foreclose on the property. Auction, the property is then offered to the public at a foreclosure auction, typically sold to the highest bidder, right? If property sells to a third party at the auction, the banker or lender recoups some of the costs, blah, 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 okay? REO status, that's the only time it becomes REO status is if the lender takes the property back at the auction, period, okay?
So it goes up for auction and there's no good bids and they just pull it back?
Right. So let's define that real quick. The auction that I'm talking about now is the public trustee's office, public trustee's auction. It has nothing to do with auction.com or Hudson and Marshall or any of these auction sites that you guys see on the internet.
Courthouse steps.
It's on the courthouse
It is.
step. That's the auction I'm talking about.
Okay.
It's on the courthouse steps. The attorney that is foreclosing on the property for the bank, right, literally walks out onto the steps at a predetermined date and time, right? Walks out on the courthouse steps, announces the docket number. It's special proceedings is the filing, right? Announces the docket number, asks if there are any bids on the property.
Do you usually have a reserve?
The reserve, yes and no, because there's going to be an opening bid, right? Sometimes that's the reserve. Sometimes it's what the bank's owed on the property. You never know, right? And I'll get to that in a second. All right, so they walk out onto the steps. They do their thing. Are there any bids? Blah, 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 blah. If nobody responds, they turn around and walk back inside and mark it as the bank declines. It's not bank owned yet. In the state of North Carolina.
Did
It's
you
a
go
little
back
bit
and
tricky.
do what?
So they walk back in, they didn't receive any bids, so the bank is obviously always going to bid their property. It's always going to revert back to the bank if it doesn't get any bids at the courthouse steps from a third party. Make sense?
That's when it becomes the REO.
No, it's not REO yet. Not in North Carolina, right? Okay. So the REO status, all right, we went through that. Sorry, so here's an insider tip. Loss mitigation, short sale, and asset disposition, all right? I get phone calls all the time from people, especially back years and years and years ago. Is how long does it take the bank to make a decision, right? Is this a foreclosure or is this a short sale, right? They are two completely and totally separate entities, even departments in the bank. And everybody understands what the bank's role is in this world of loss mitigation and REO. You want me to break that down real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. When we go to the bank, if there's a bank, Al's Bank, right across the street over here, and I deposit money in that bank, okay, or take money out of that bank is a servicer. The four walls, in that bank, that's all they are, okay, period. The people who are calling the shots, so to speak, behind the scenes are the investors in that bank, right? Wall Street, private investment clubs, real estate investment trusts, all those guys are the ones that determine all of this REO stuff. That bank has nothing to do with this decision. Does everybody get that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when we have people asking us questions about, I saw such and such property coming up on the market, or such and such property has been vacant, the grass is 8 freaking feet tall and nobody's there and all this stuff. You'll all get that question. Can you find out any information on it? Right? I'll get to that in a second. Okay. So the difference between loss mitigation and asset disposition. Loss mitigation is the short sale process. There's a completely separate division from REO and loss mitigation.
Where are you on this?
Just the insider
Got
tip
it.
at the first one. Loss mitigation are the people that we have to go through to get the short sale approved. An REO property is a bank-owned property, period. Or government security exchange, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, those types of people. And let me be clear on one thing too. HUD properties are not foreclosure properties. HUD properties are government-owned properties through FHA, Federal Housing Authority.
How about VA?
VA is a foreclosure property. Okay?
What? Yes.
Right. So
What
a
makes
HUD
them-
property,
Yeah.
a HUD property is not a foreclosure property. If the Federal Housing Authority, FHA, takes back a property in foreclosure, it's a government-owned property.
So when the FHA is backing the loan, if it's an FHA loan, then they're the one, they pay the bank off, and then they have the property.
They are the bank. They are the bank on the backside. Remember I was talking about servicer,
Right.
right? So if somebody goes to Al's bank and gets an FHA loan, right? Makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
FHA is the one that handles the loan. I just service the paper.
So if you own a home with a FHA loan, is the process different?
No, it's still a foreclosure process. It's just not called foreclosure.
It's called a HUD property.
It's called a HUD property, a government-owned property. Right, just one of those little things. Because we're all going to be experts after this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So everybody get that, the difference between short sale and REO. Okay. Short sale, they have to beg, plead that, you know, the house is, they owe $200,000 on the house is only worth $100,000, blah, blah, blah. Right? Everybody understand?
Mm-hmm.
If you are ever involved in a short sale, or if you ever take a short sale listing, and I'm going to tell you, I was running some numbers this morning. I'll go over them in a second. I don't think we have to worry about this for probably the next 12, 14 months or so before we kind of start seeing an increase. I mean, you've been around for a long time.
Yep.
I'm hearing from asset managers that I haven't heard from in probably 4 years. 5 years, you know, calling, emailing, hey, Allie's still in business. You know, I hadn't heard from you in a while. Can you update your information, that kind of stuff, right? It kind of freaks me out a little bit,
I
right?
just did a short sale close.
You just did one?
Mhm.
How long did it take you?
It took, we did the contract for 60 days because that's what the listing agent promised. Everything was set up and organized for that.
Yeah.
And we finally got it done in 72 days.
You did a short sale in 72 days.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty freaking good.
Oh, okay. I was really frustrated. I finally wrote them and said, you're costing my clients, you know, this much a day because they have their loan rate locked. And we're going to back out of sale if you don't make a decision. And then the next day we had all our paperwork.
Wow.
Good for you.
But
Who remembers
Go to
short
work.
sales last in a year?
really? Oh
Oh,
my gosh.
yeah, that's
Thank
great.
the Lord that didn't happen.
That's great. So you probably had a pre-approved short sale.
We did. The house went, the house was going to go into foreclosure. It was supposed to be on the auction steps, but they got an offer that was way low from an investor, so it stopped the foreclosure process, but it was still in the foreclosure list.
Mhm.
The listing agent put it into short sale with loss mitigation, but it somehow didn't come off the foreclosure list. So then she had to quickly get that file withdrawn, get the short sale file on the top of the
On the
stack.
stack.
Mm-hmm.
When you're
And then-
dealing with one, you have basically five different entities. You've got loss mitigation, you've got the short sale approval division, you've got to get it out of the foreclosure department over into the short sale department. With that listing agent, believe it or not, did a phenomenal job because the banks do not care. They would just as soon take it back than get it
Yeah,
back.
that was what was surprising to me, because they didn't seem to care much. but-
They don't.
Well, the
In my
other side
experience.
of that was how many liens were on the property
There
and
were
all.
2 liens, but she had calculated liens commission and what the bank would settle at into the list price.
Mm.
So she had all the kind of the extras calculated into the list price. So when she listed it in the MLS, all that was already in there.
You were dealing with a good agent too.
Who was that?
Yeah.
Her name's
That's
Megan Blake, and she's with Keller Williams.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I had
So
no
you
idea
were-
what I was getting into, but
Well, all right. So to get that done that quickly, and from what you're telling us here, you were operating on a very thin line
yeah.
of money owed compared to
Yes,
what was
yes.
okay. All right. All right.
Yeah, they
So
weren't
you
upside
weren't-
down very much.
All right.
Just a little
So
bit.
all right, that makes a huge difference
Mhm.
because if a bank pushes a property into foreclosure, there is some cost involved, right? Don't buy into the myth that, it's going to cost $50,000 to foreclose on a property. It doesn't cost that much. I don't know how much it costs. We're recording this, but it doesn't cost that much to foreclose on a property. And the reason that foreclosure properties are called assets, right, is because they are assets to the bank. Once the bank takes them back,
Mhm.
okay, the interest stops, the payments, all that stuff. It's like me giving JT, sorry. It's like me giving JT a house that I own, saying, just hold on to this for me until I need to do something with it. Okay? It's in the asset column, not the liability column. All JT has to do for me as my agent, right, is make sure that the grass is cut, make sure that the HOA fees are paid, and make sure that the taxes are paid. I can close my property up indefinitely until I need it or until I want to do something with it, right? And if I'm the servicer at Al's Bank, right, and my investors back here, the ones that are really pulling the strings, come to me and say, hey, we need to do some money here, trade some stuff around, do something, right? Let's go ahead and get that asset on the market so that we can recoup some of the funds. That make sense? That's basically the way it works. My all-time record, 6.5 years. Audra, I think we were in multiple offers on that house with
149
the crazy
District
guy in the back with the farm, right? 6.5 years the damn thing sat on the market. I mean, 6.5 years it sat empty,
Good.
right?
grief.
Why?
Have no idea.
Bank didn't need the money.
Have no idea. The only thing I can figure on something that long was that when the people went into foreclosure, they probably declared bankruptcy. Okay? And once you're under bankruptcy protection, it's a federal law, right? Once you're under bankruptcy protection, all the properties, all that stuff is blended into that. The bank has to get a stay of execution, right, from the bankruptcy court to allow that property to be sold. And if somebody who knows the system has a good attorney, they can milk it for ever and ever.
And a lot of times they stay in the properties
Yeah.
Yeah.
during the process.
Mhm.
Good.
Yeah.
There were people that had not made payments since 2008 and were just foreclosed on in 2013, 14, 15.
Oh my gosh.
I've seen that.
I've seen that in Florida, people doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all they have to do is send one piece of paper to the bank,
Mhm.
and then they have to.
They like lived in it for years.
And then what was beautiful for the sellers or the owners of the property, the turnovers within the bank's departments. A new asset manager would come on board, and then the process would start over because they can't find this piece of paper, and then another asset manager, and they figured out how
Get
to
around the system.
stay in properties without making payments.
Right.
Mhm.
It's crazy.
And that's when you get into your 5 years of tax bills, your home equity lines of credit, your first mortgages, your God knows what else is.
Liens and stuff.
It's a crazy world.
I had one I've forgotten about till you started talking about with the they had declared bankruptcy, but the house was not part of the bankruptcy. I don't know how they ended up. And so I was with Alan Tate at the time, and my broker kept saying, you can't do that. And so, you know, I had to look into it and I figured it all out, but it wasn't part of it. So I was able to list their house and close, but it did take, it pushed me from meeting my goal for the end of the year, you know, Alan Tate thing. Because if it had closed, I would have been at a different level, you know. But because I closed 10 days after the fact or something, it didn't close until January.
It's probably a homestead exemption.
There's
I
no
don't
telling.
know, but it wasn't included in it, and so they were able, and then they got to keep all the money. I never really quite understood that, like even in bankruptcy. But somehow they were in bankruptcy, but they were really working hard to get everything taken care of. So I don't know.
Or they quit claimed it to somebody else. Or.
I don't know. I've gone up to the bankruptcy court 2 or 3 times. It's up in Wilkesboro, and some of these bankruptcy attorneys for the banks that are, you know, representing the banks, they're pretty tough people. Like really, really, really tough people. And if they want something, and it may have been the case there, if they have justification and an equity position in a home that could be liquidated in order to solve some of the problem, then sometimes they can expedite that and have I forgot what they call it, but they can, rather than include it, they could omit it right from the beginning and let the
I did one. They still have to get court approval with an offer to sell. Even though it is removed from the bankruptcy, I had a seller that had that happen. And her attorney had to submit for a hearing. So that took another 10 days to get on the docket, to get the hearing, to get the court to approve, even though it's not a part of the bankruptcy.
To approve the release.
Right, because of the debts that they had involved in their bankruptcy. So sometimes they got lucky if they got to keep all the proceeds.
Yeah, or maybe they liquidated the proceeds to pay some stuff off.
Yeah.
Or maybe it kept them out of bankruptcy. You never know. You know? All right, so let's jump back into this. So let's talk a little bit about the North Carolina 10-day upset period, right? Bidden by a third party. I guarantee you that at some time in your career, if you've been around for a while, you've been asked this. If you're just getting started, you're going to eventually get asked this question. And are you Molly?
I am.
Hi, Molly.
Hi, I know you are.
Molly just went through
So nice to meet you.
an interesting scenario with me.
So I'm still in.
Pick on Molly a little bit. Molly Laporte. Okay, so let's talk about this in North Carolina today. You're eventually going to get asked by a neighbor, by a client of yours, somebody, you know, hey, I got a house down the street from me, and like I was joking around, you know, the grass is 8 feet tall. You know, it's in foreclosure. My next door neighbor's cousin's aunt's friend from Tennessee told me that they found this on Zillow. Right? Okay. So what's the deal? Right? So we're going to break down the deal real quick here. Okay? Buying at the courthouse steps, bidding by a third party, blah, blah, blah. All right. So usually the property is occupied. There are no inspections or appraisals, and you cannot access the property. That is very, very important, okay? If the grass is 8 feet tall, there could still be somebody living in that house. If you access that property or try to find out, you know, knocking on the door or whatever, one phone call, you're criminal trespassing. I cannot express this enough, okay? Until it is a bank-owned property, right? Don't access that property, right? If it's in pre-foreclosure and you may be able to help them out and talk to them, right? Makes sense? Then by all means, you can go to the property and knock on the door. Hey, your property's in pre-foreclosure, and I might be able to help you out of the situation if we can sell your house or something like that. But once it goes to the auction at the courthouse steps, don't go over to the property. Don't. Okay? Don't go to the property. Once it goes to the courthouse steps, don't go to that property. In the state of North Carolina, from the date it goes to the courthouse steps, right? They do the bidding and all that stuff. That day starts a 10-day upset period, okay? So let's say that we go to the courthouse steps tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning is usually when the auctions are held, okay? So the 12th at 10 o'clock tomorrow, they come out, the attorneys come out, they do their thing, you know, any bids, this, that, and the other, right? And nobody bids on the property, then it reverts back to the bank, okay? The 10-day upset period starts tomorrow. For 10 days, during that period, for 10 days, anybody can go in and upset the bid at the courthouse steps, right? If a third party bids on the property, if an investor bids on the property, right, it's still the 10-day upset period. Anybody can go in there and upset that bid. The way you upset a bid is you increase the lowest bid by at least 5%, and you put 5% down to the trustee's office, okay? 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say 10 times out of 10, you're paying cash for the property. That's just the way it works. Because you can't access the property, you can't do an appraisal, you can't more than likely get a loan on the property, right? If you guys come across somebody who wants to do that, by all means, go for it. The number one thing they have to do is hire an attorney and get an opinion of title. Absolutely, without a doubt, 100%. And they also, you need to have some very specific terminology in your buyer's agency that you get paid a commission, right? Because this is no MLS or any of that stuff, right? They have to get an opinion of title. They have to understand what's owed on the property. They have to verify the PIN number, and they have to verify any outstanding junior liens on the property, because they're buying the property unless they are the foreclosing party, the bank. They're buying the property subject to any liens on the property. Does that make sense? Okay. The only people that can get the junior liens and secondary liens and all that crazy stuff removed through the foreclosure process is the foreclosing party, the foreclosing bank. Does everybody get that?
Say that again.
Okay. So if I have Al's bank is foreclosing on the property, right? And I have a 80% loan on on Al's bank for the property. And Guy's bank has a second position loan, 20%. Remember those 80-20 loans? Okay. The people default on my loan. I'm in primary position, number one, okay? I'm the foreclosing party rather, okay? I get my property back in foreclosure, right? Guy's loan is wiped off of my books, so to speak. Now, he has a deed of trust and a promissory note with the people, okay? So that's up to Guy to go get his money, however he does that. But I am satisfying my foreclosure, okay? He has to deal with whatever he needs to deal with on his end.
Does the person buying it have to deal with that?
Guy's eventually gonna go find him and talk to him, figure it out, because they have a promissory note. But the person
They have an
who's,
interest still in the property,
yeah, oh yeah,
even though you foreclosed.
I foreclosed, right? So I own my asset now. Make sense? Okay? It's a little confusing.
But you wouldn't want to mess with that, right? I mean, if
Absolutely. Why wouldn't I? So if he has a second lien on the property, right? I don't care about him. But
wait, are you no, you're the bank. He's the bank.
I'm bank
No,
A.
I'm saying, okay, if the buyer was interested in the property and there was more than one lien on it,
right, then he would have to pay me off and Guy off if he bought it at the courthouse steps.
but at the courthouse steps, though, when you're paying the money, you're only buying you off.
No.
Oh, you're buying him off too?
Buying him off too. That's
Oh,
when you
that's
take
what
it
I didn't know.
subject to. Only the foreclosing party, right? So I'm the only one, if I'm bank A, Al's bank, right, and I foreclose on the property,
Right.
right, I'm taking my asset back. I don't care what happens to Guy. Because what Guy's,
No, I
this is
get
gonna get
that.
confusing. But what Guy's gonna try to do is buy my primary position out and try to take the property back for himself so that he can protect the money that he's loaned on the bank.
But if he doesn't,
But if he doesn't, I can care less.
no, I know you could care less.
Right.
But I'm trying to.
So then her question is, her buyer comes, is her buyer responsible for the debt on the second?
No.
That's what I was asking.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, they don't.
Thank
No, they don't.
So if they win the bid at the courthouse, that's it. They've paid
If you represent a buyer at the courthouse steps, and Al's Bank is the foreclosing party, and Guy's Bank has a lien on the property, you're paying me off and him.
What about if there's any other liens out
Then you're
there?
paying those off too.
Everything.
Tax bills,
Even their,
So-
their tax filings. Like
HOA.
Not on their personal taxes. If they owe the federal government, that's.
Yeah, if they owe the IRS anything, the IRS is being paid off before anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Y'all know that. I mean, that's
Yeah.
real estate.
But
Yeah.
from the proceeds of the bid,
From,
the proceeds of the auction. That's
No,
where
you have to
everybody's
pay him
getting-
off after
No.
that. Oh, the auction's only for him.
auctions for
So
me.
you just said,
Well,
Right.
if he takes ownership back,
Right, then
then.
I own the property as
then-
REO.
no, I'm saying an investor, whoever's standing there bidding, the
Right.
bidders at the courthouse.
Third party bidders.
Right, the third party bidders. I'm
Right.
saying once somebody wins the bid,
After the 10-day upset period and they've been awarded the house.
Right.
at that point,
Then-
it's wiped, the slate is wiped clean.
Yeah, but they have to pay me off and Guy's Bank off.
And
So the
anything
bank
else?
is gonna open up the bid on the courthouse steps for.
So
what-
let's break it down in numbers. Let's make it easy. All right, so I'm owed $200,000 on the house, right? Okay. Guy's owed $25,000 on the house. Make sense? All right.
And the HOA is.
The HOA is
owed $1,000.
$5,000.
Just say 1,000.
All right, $1,000, and Joe Blow's Plumbing, right,
Another 1,000.
is another $1,000 because they never paid Joe Blow.
$227,000.
$227,000 total. Okay, I'm owed $200,000, $25,000, $1,000, right? If I'm a third party and I go to the courthouse steps and I say, yes, I'm going to buy the property, right? The opening bid, since I'm the foreclosing party, may only be $200,000 on the docket, right? So they think, oh, I got this smoking freaking deal because the house is worth $275,000, right? So they win. The third party wins, but they haven't done their research through their attorney, through their opinion and title, because now they don't know about Guy, and they don't know about Guy's Bank, and they don't know about the Joe Blow's Plumbing and the HOA. Right? So now they owe $227,000 to satisfy all liens, judgments, and encumbrances on the property to be able to take the
That
loan.
have been recorded. So if the HOA didn't record their lien or whatever, then they're, that's all.
Make sense? That's why, unless your investors know exactly what they're dealing with through hiring an attorney, don't even let them bid on the first opening round.
How much does it cost you? Like, what would for an attorney to do that, and then the attorney pays everyone else off, correct? Before recording the new deed. That. You know, I was just curious. how
No,
much
the
that costs.
opinion and title is one thing that they would do first, just to figure out what's owed on the property.
You know, and then once they do that, then they gotta. I mean, it's like a regular closing. They gotta pay all the liens off,
Yes, correct.
and then record a clean title.
Yeah.
So just
Yeah, and there's a whole nother step involved with that. So if you've got, oh, we're doing good on time, and I can stay here all day if you want. But if you got Joe Blow's Plumbing Shop over here, right? Let me tell you all this one story. So I did a deal where there was a builder involved, and this guy owed everybody and their mother money. I mean, he was leveraged to the freaking hilt. He couldn't get a loan for an ice cream. It was a horrible, horrible deal. And he got caught up with the A, B, and C, right? So A house is 90% complete, so he starts building B house. He gets a contract on B, or he gets a contract on A, and then he's building B, but he's robbing Peter to pay Paul to cover the beginning of C. Y'all remember all that craziness that went on? All right. So he was forced into a top-down short sale, okay? And the bank said, Al, if you can go out and you can get us $300,000 for this house, right? Top-down short sales is a pre-approved short sale, basically, same thing, okay? Get us $300,000 for this house, get us $150,000 for this house that's 60% completed, get us, whatever, $50,000 for this lot. We will package this whole deal up and let you sell them as a short sale, all right? Easy enough. Right? It's a beautiful house. It's worth $450,000. Slam dunk. Right? So we go through the process, do the short sale and all this stuff, get a contract for the property, right? The bank failed to mention, and it was a local bank here, but they failed to mention that there were other entities involved. The guy never paid Joe Blow's Plumbing. He never paid the damn landscaping contractors. He never paid this, he never paid this, and all this stuff. So we had one master loan, one position loan, and we had like 11 junior liens, mechanic liens. I mean, he owed everybody money. So what we did was, rather than force the property into foreclosure, because that's the only way, right, to get rid of those liens, okay? We went and we negotiated with every lien holder on the property through the attorneys at the bank. And that's how we got the short sale done. Understand, as real estate agents, we cannot negotiate with junior lien holders on our property, right? That is the law. When you hear about people that got in all that trouble and all that stuff for doing short sales, that's what they were doing. They had first lien, second lien, junior liens, all this stuff. They were trying to negotiate with all these people to try to put a deal together. Don't do that. If you start doing these short sales again or whatever, what's that, the Wild Law Firm? Have y'all heard of him? I can't remember the guy's first name. W-I-L-D-E. If you've got a good short sale and you think you can pull it off, and there's, I hate to talk about money, but if there's enough money in it for your time, contact Steve Wild. Steve Wild, he's up in Asheville. He's been doing these things for 500 years. That's all he does. Just give it to him, make the sellers cooperate as much as they're willing to, and he'll get it done if he can. Okay?
So he'll negotiate the junior lien.
He'll do everything. And his number one requirement is that the seller has to be willing to participate with him and has to be willing to supply information to him. He knows it within the first meeting that he has with him. He gets his fee from the bank. Or the one that's
And what's his name again?
Stephen Wild.
Wow.
W-I-L-D-E. He used to come to Superior Schools, CE, but I haven't seen him the last couple of times.
I'll make sure the number's right before I give it to everybody.
All right, so last thing on that, if you are going down that road with the trustees sale and the bidding and all that stuff, the courthouse steps, right? You want to try to find out as much information as you possibly can, obviously, right? When you do hire the attorney, or when the client hires the attorney, right, to do the opinion of title, very, very important, very, very important, so that they know what they're getting themselves into. You want to be able, as their agent, because they're going to pay you, because they're going to put the wording in your buyer agency contract that they're going to pay you if they get this deal, right? Okay. Be able to supply them with as much information to save them money with the attorney right off the bat. So tax cards, GIS, whatever. Tax records, previous MLS sheets, real list report, GIS, any information that you can possibly find. Right? Get it together, give it to the investor.
Question. So you're hiring, you really should hire the attorney for that opinion before you go to the court.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. believe me, there's a guy in Mooresville who bought a crematorium, right? He thought he was buying a building on Main Street. He thought he was buying a building on Main Street for $10,000. The building where Chop House is,
Yeah.
Epic Chop House.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about, right? He's running around. This was probably 15 years ago. Running around telling everybody he's buying this building for $10,000 at the courthouse steps and all that stuff. What he ended up buying was the old crematorium right behind the Chop House on the left-hand side because he didn't hire an attorney and he never verified the PIN number of the structure. He was going 100% by the legal description. I mean, the address, right? And the address, you know, think about how old those buildings are. Yeah. There's so much screwed up stuff in those notes, right? So yeah, he bought a crematorium for $10,000.
How about that was a
Also,
shocker?
you won't find typically second deeds of trusts. You won't find car loans that have been defaulted on and judgments that have been put against the person, against the
Yeah.
property. There's so much out there you won't find. You want an attorney.
Yeah. Yeah, once there's blood in the water, so to speak, and anybody who's owed money on a property sees that it goes into foreclosure, because you got to remember, when a property goes into foreclosure, they have to advertise it. Statesville Landmark newspaper. I don't know what the one is from
Lincoln
Lincoln.
Times.
What's it?
Lincoln Times.
Lincoln Times.
Lincoln,
Once that's advertised, anybody that's owed money on it is going to file a lien on the property because they know, right, if somebody else buys it or if the person lists the house, they're going to get paid off.
Right.
Make sense?
Mhm.
Unless the bank buys it.
Do they have time? What's their time frame to file the liens for the bid?
Whenever, as long as it doesn't go into foreclosure or to the sale before they file the lien. Right? So mechanics lien is what, you have up to 120 days from the date of the finished
Service.
work to file. Right? But anybody who's owed money by the person who owns the property can expedite a judgment against them, a lien against them in the court and try to get their money.
But they have to have that in before it goes up for auction, right?
Correct. Correct. If they filed afterwards, then that would be like a title insurance deal. Makes sense?
It's been interesting the last 3 courthouse steps I've gone to in Lincolnton. Banks are getting them back. Nobody's bidding on them. They're waiting to do the upset with the bank.
I would.
Yeah.
The 10-day upset.
I would. And unless you got somebody with real deep pockets and a really good attorney, I wouldn't bid on anything.
What's the upset? What do you mean by that?
The 10-day upset.
For anybody.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, when the
Anybody-
bank gets it back
right.
on the courthouse steps,
Thanks.
then the investor goes in. And
Yeah.
of course, the investors have been in there because they've been listed on MLS prior to
Who's been listed?
the foreclosed properties. Like Al could list a.
No, you're thinking of something different. So that's some level 2 stuff. All right, so let me break that down. All right, so if a property goes into foreclosure, okay, the attorneys will list them as an auction on sites like auction.com, HudsonMarshall.com, Zone.com, pre-foreclosure on Zillow. If you pull those up, pre-foreclosure, they're going to have the attorney's name there. That's all they're doing. It's still going to the courthouse steps. Typically, the opening bid or the price that they have on that will satisfy the foreclosing parties lien on the property.
The first one.
The first,
Just the first
Just
one?
the
Just the
first.
first.
No foreclosure ever has all encompassing.
Right. And then so why are you saying that it's better to wait till the bank bids on it and then go?
Because then you have a better idea of what's actually owed on the property without spending a whole bunch of money with an attorney.
And why is that?
Because their opening bid is going to be typically, I'm not an attorney, typically what they're owed on the property.
The first lien holder.
The first lien, the foreclosing party.
Right, so then, okay, so back to your 225.
Yeah.
One and one. Okay.
So my opening bid for Al's bank would be $200,000. So if I get my $200,000 back, sometimes I'll tack on my cost of foreclosure, right? So you might see 210, right?
Right.
If I get my money back, great, I don't care. You can have the property, but now you gotta deal with Guy. And the other people.
During the upset period.
Correct. It's confusing as hell, I'm telling you. That's why, like I said, if you're gonna go down this road, make sure that they have an attorney, make sure that they understand what they're dealing with, help them out as much as you possibly can, and make sure that you are gonna get paid for your time.
Use a real world example. Use your Cindy Lane listing. It just came back.
Well,
What do you mean?
In the scenario of, okay, the bank, I have it listed, the bank.
All right, so let's use a fictional. You want a breakdown of the REO process?
Well, so they can it's a lot to process, so.
Okay, so what you want to know is when they come on the market and what the beginning process is.
So, yeah,
Time
so
frame.
how did you get it? You got the list.
Okay, all right, so let me give you the 10,000 foot version, right? Because that's a whole other class. All right, so typically what happens is the property goes to the courthouse steps and it's bid on or not bid on. The bank ends up taking it back, okay? If they take it back in the 10-day upset period, so 10 days from when they originally bid on the property, then they put it in their REO file, okay? Then it's assigned an REO number. It's real estate owned, the bank owns it, right? If an investor comes in there and bids on it, then it starts all over again. Okay. So in a perfect world, there's no other bidders. The bank takes it back. 10 days later, they get the trustee's file, right? That's not the deed yet, right? So they take the property back. They send me out to knock on the door, right, and see if anybody's living in the property.
Be afraid.
I'll tell you, I don't know
Did you
if
see
there's.
the bank gets after that 10-day period?
The trustee's deed.
Oh, thanks.
They get a trustee's deed, okay, or foreclosure. All right, so then they call me or they send me an email and say, hey, Al, we got a new property and such and such. Do you want to handle the property? Yes, perfect, wonderful, great. It's a $22,000 property, freaking Salisbury. But you can't turn those down because the 220 or 22,000 might turn into 250,000.
Because they won't call you the next time if you say that.
Exactly. All right. So I go out to Salisbury and I knock on the door, ding, 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 and I don't know if it's a little 90-year-old lady sitting there or 7 felons in a halfway house.
Right, exactly.
Which is an absolute true story. It happened on Sunset Boulevard. 7 felons in an illegal halfway house. I knock on the door. Ding, ding, ding. Hi. Right? So I knock on the door. If nobody's there, okay, and I can prove that nobody's there. How do I prove? I get on my phone, I call Duke Energy, right? Is the electricity on at this property? They can tell me yes or no. They can't tell me whose name it was in, but they can tell me yes or no. Hi, this is Al Wimberly. I'm a real estate broker. I'm here on behalf of U.S. Bank, and I just need to verify whether or not the electricity is on. Okay. If the electricity is off or if the meter's gone, right, there's a pretty good chance that they're not living there. But then again, they may be still living there. You never know, right? If I can prove that the property is vacant, right, then the bank has their right to exercise the terms of their deed of trust to protect their asset, right? So I call my locksmith and we can rekey the back door only, period. That's it.
Do you put a sticker on the front door?
You put the sticker on the front door and all that stuff. All right, you know, this property has been deemed vacant, blah, 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 and all that stuff. Okay. We can rekey the back door only. That's it. Because you cannot restrict access to somebody's home. Right? Okay. Typically when we post the property, you know, with the deal, you'll get a phone call from somebody and they'll say, hey, this is my property or whatever it may be. All right, then you got to go back out there and devote. All right, but if I knock on the door and they're there, they're in the property, I introduce myself, which is, you know, people jump out of airplanes all the time. You want an adrenaline rush, you go beat on somebody's door, it's in foreclosure, and when that door, you hear tok, 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 and You see the handle turn and it opens, you talk about adrenaline, crazy, right? Because right then and there, you are the bank. You are the bank, the attorney, every credit, every debt collector that's ever called them, that's ever filed against them, that's
Everybody get mad at.
everybody in the world, right? Hi, you know.
Will the sheriff go with you?
No, sheriff's done. Sheriff's already posted the property, right? So the sheriff posts the property as soon as the bank takes it back, most of the time, right? If you ever see the yellow sheet on the door with the sheriff's emblem on it, that's the posting. That says you need to move out by such and such day. Most people get home, they look at that, they rip it down, throw it away, and they wait for me, right? Because they don't want to leave, right? Knock on the door, answer the door. You know, hi, my name is Al Wimberly. I'm here on behalf of U.S. Bank. Are you aware that this property is going through the foreclosure process? We don't know what you're talking about. Boom, close the door. Or yes, we do. Well, what are your intentions to vacate the property? It's now a bank-owned property, okay? Then talk to them a little bit about that. And sometimes the banks will offer cash for keys, or the pretty word for it is relocation assistance. You know, I understand that you guys went through hell here, and, you know, sorry about that, but fortunately we've come to this time frame and we've got to do something, okay? So the bank is prepared to offer you relocation assistance to get your family moved, you know, within 10 days, 15 days, 30 days, whatever it is, right?
How much money is that usually?
It can range from, the shorter time period is going to be the most money, right? Longer time period is going to be less. So it could be, I tell you, I did one in the point that $15,000, and the guy was out in 15 days. But it was $15,000 on a $1.2 million house. And the idea with that is that if I can preserve the asset, if they take the cash for keys or the relocation assistance package that day, then I go in and take pictures of everything. Everything.
Make sure they don't steal the appliances and all that.
Everything stays except for their personal property. If there's a TV on the wall, they can take the TV, but they're going to leave the mount. It's the same kind of rules that we play by, right? Okay. They take their personal property, they leave the window coverings, they leave the appliances and all that stuff. The house has to be left in broom clean condition, right? Get all their stuff out. There can be no trash on the front yard. None of that stuff has to be completely empty for the relocation to work.
And they don't get the money till they comply with all that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So if it's 15 days, they tell me they can be out. On the 15th day, I show up with a check for $15,000 in this case. That now, granted, they aren't all that high. That was a very, very rare situation. The guy was pissed at the world and basically told me, unless you play by my rules, I'll just torch the thing because it's still my house until it's not. Right? So that's exactly what I told the bank. Standing right there in front of me. Hold on a second. Called him. Told me if we don't play by the rules, 15 days, 15 grand, he's going to burn the place down. Pay him the 15 grand. That's what we did. Okay? So then that process is done. He moves out in 15 days. Then we secure the property, change all the locks and all that stuff, and then put the utilities in our name, typically, right? Get the electricity back on and all that stuff. Then we start the property preservation series. Get the grass cut, get the property winterized, make sure that everything's good to go, so to speak. Some banks want inspections done. You know, they want a roof inspection, they want a well inspection, they want a septic inspection, they want an electricity inspection, all this crazy stuff, right? So then we get to do all that stuff for them, right? And get them all those reports. Electricity, gas, water, inspections, structural engineer reports. Get all that stuff to them. All right. Then they order a broker price opinion from me, okay? I go and take some pictures of the inside of the house and all this stuff and put together an elaborate CNA, basically. That's all it is. Pull some comps, put it together, paint a picture of the neighborhood and what's going on in the neighborhood. paint a picture of the area for them, take hundreds of pictures for these people, right? Then once my BPO is done, then they order an appraisal. See, you see when I was talking about this, how this is going to be a 3-part class. We've only made it to line 2 here. We're going to have to come back. But all right, so then they order an appraisal, right? So the appraiser calls me and gets access to the property, okay? The appraiser does their thing. Then they compare my number with the appraiser's number, right? But I don't get to see the appraiser's number, and the appraiser doesn't get to see my number, right? If there's a variance between my number and his number, you know, no offense, but if he's from freaking Winston-Salem and he's appraising a property in, you know, Sherrill's Ford on the lake or whatever, you know, there's going to be a variance. So if there's a variance, then they order another BPO, right? And if there's a variance between those 3, then they'll order another BPO. Okay? All right. So in some world of craziness, they eventually come up with an as-is price and a repaired price, right? And then some of them want a 30 days liquidation price, okay? So what I'm explaining can take anywhere from 2 months to 6 months before we even put the thing on the market yet, right? So all this process happens and goes on, and then eventually the property comes on the market for sale. Every REO property that I've ever sold, and I'm not being braggadocious by any means whatsoever, but I ran some numbers, and I think I've sold like 700 of these things over the years, right? Hundreds of millions of dollars of REO inventory. Most of them, probably 90%, have been through the MLS, okay? 90% of them sold through the MLS. Some of them have been bulk sales, some of them have been tape sales, some of them have been to hedge funds, that kind of stuff. And, you know, put a bunch of these little properties together, right, and sell them off to these guys. They'll take down 50 at a time, right, that kind of stuff. But I'd say probably 95% of them go to the MLS and are sold on the MLS. Right? The thing to remember about the MLS is that typically when you see a property on the MLS, okay, there's typically a requirement of 5 days for it to be on the MLS before the bank will look at any offers. Okay, that's just kind of a rule because they've received so much slack from people arguing as to whether or not their offer was even presented, right? That they've adopted that or adapted that into their policy. Put it on the market for 5 days. That way we'd be damn sure that people are seeing the thing, okay, and submitting their offers. A lot of them are even moving towards buyer agents submitting the offers directly into the system, so that the banks can see it. So Home Path, Fannie Mae, right? Home Steps, Freddie Mac, ResNet, RES.net is another one. You submit straight into the system. The listing agent gets a little email and says, hey, Al, you got an offer on such and such property. They've already seen it. So it takes the question away from, has my offer been presented? It's a good thing. It's a good thing. All right, so let's try to knock a little bit more of this stuff out. Are we going till 1?
Till 1.
Are y'all okay? I need to think about it.
I had 2 questions. One, how do you get in with the bank so that they call you on properties like that? And 2, how do you negotiate your commission as listing agent if you're working with the property for that long of a period prior to?
There is no negotiation.
They just tell you what your commission is?
They tell you exactly what your commission is. They tell you exactly what the price is going to be. You do a lot of free work in this business. That's why you always hear, REO agents, well, they're doing 500-600 deals, 1,500 deals a year. They have to.
Mm-hmm.
Think about this. You got 15 properties on the market. You're paying the minimums on each property. Gas, water, and electricity. Nothing's running in the house, but it still costs you $60 a
It
month.
costs the agent?
The agent pays. The bank reimburses, right? So you got $60 per property times 15. That's $900 a month that you're paying. My wife used to hate, my wife did the bookkeeping. It was like we owned
15 rental properties.
Yeah.
50 properties that we're
Yeah.
taking care of.
When does the bank reimburse?
So the bank will reimburse some of them are 15, 30, 60, 90 days out.
Not, they don't wait until it's sold. In other words, if it's a.
No. And if you don't get your reimbursements in on time exactly the way they want to do them, then they'll kick them out for another 120 days. We're going to have to delete that video here. But yeah, you get reimbursed most of the time. All right, so let's at least touch base on the rest of the stuff, and then we'll get some more questions. Okay, so making an offer on an REO, ask the following: if you're gonna write on one of these properties, you have a better chance today of actually talking to somebody at the REO company. You know, you may not talk to the listing agent. I never understood that. I never saw what the ego trip was on that. I always picked up the phone and talked to people, but sometimes they have processors or portfolio managers that handle their business, right? You want to at least try to get somebody, try to get some point of conversation going before you write the offer, okay? And the things you want to ask are obviously check the MLS attachments for any information about the bank addendums or instructions or anything, right? If you're looking at a foreclosure property on the MLS, always check that attachment section, because a lot of times we're required to upload instructions and upload things that can help you out, right? Yeah.
So I may be backtracking a little. If you don't want to answer it,
That's
just go ahead. You tell me that you'll do it later. But you said that they would come up with 3 prices. I guess my question is, when I'm seeing for foreclosure property, like a lot of times I think they're overpriced.
Yeah, so that's the $1 million question. How do they come up with the price?
And then, but I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, this is not a deal. Like, I don't understand. They're just pricing it like it's a regular listing. And
Right.
at that point, I don't even know.
That's the $1 million question, and I can answer that fairly easily, right? It doesn't matter in the beginning, right? Because most of them are going to do pretty specific price reductions. It may be every 30 days, every 45 days, every 60 days, right? But most of them are going to do price reductions, okay? If I could ever figure out what their opening price was going to be, I'd probably make a lot more money selling these things. Nobody knows what the opening price is going to be. It doesn't matter what my BPO says. It doesn't matter what the second BPO, the third BPO, the appraiser, whatever. They just spit out a number. And a lot of times, it has everything to do with the investors on the backside pushing the buttons. That's just the way it works. So if you see one and you think, these guys are freaking nuts, there's no way this is going to sell.
It doesn't mean you can't put
You're
an offer
probably
in.
right. But it doesn't mean that you can't put in an offer.
So do they ever tell you when you've received an offer, let's say it's been on the market for 3 days.
Right.
And the list price is $500,000 and somebody came in and offered $400,000.
Yeah.
And then did they ever come back to you at some point, like in 60 days later, and go, can you go back to that listing agent? I mean, the
Happens all the
buyer's
time.
agent.
I've seen people come in and offer $400,000, right? And then do a price reduction 30 days later and take an offer for $350,000 when they had a $400,000 offer on the table. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me.
Seen it all.
You can attest to this. You cannot analyze this in any way whatsoever.
It's not logical.
There is no logic.
Well, then it's not for me.
Because it's crazy.
It'll absorb you.
Silly.
There's no analytical process. But what I can share with you, right, whether it takes 30 days, 60, 90, 120, 522 days, it doesn't matter. When they hit the magic number, right, I will sell them between 97 and 108% of asking price all day long with multiple offers. Right.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter when they do their price reductions, right? Whether it takes 30 days to get it right, 60, 120, 2 years.
You're saying if it's 97% or more, they'll take it.
I'm saying once they hit the number that the market demands for that product. If they start off at $1 million and the market knows it's worth $700,000, right? If they hit the $700,000 number, a year later, there will be multiple offers and they will sell eventually between 98 or 97 and 108% of asking price. No matter how long it takes.
And why can't they get to that number quicker? Like,
Because-
it's insane.
Because they want
It's insane,
to,
it's like dumb.
they want to prove to their investors that they tried anything and everything they could to maximize the return. Right? And I'm going to jump ahead here. If you're in a multiple offer and highest and best situation, this is an insider tip, right? This doesn't have anything to do with my properties at all. I understand that, right? But if you're in a multiple offer and highest and best, your first number better be the asking price number of that house. So if it's on the market for $492,000 and your client is hardcore stuck at $385 because they want to negotiate, I can guarantee you 99.9% they're going to lose. If they've got a 4 on the thing, right? You increase your odds by 30% just having a 4, right? It's on $450,000, right? 405. You got a much better odds.
So in that case where you were talking about 400,000 and then you said, and then in a certain time after that, they'll go back and take 350,000.
Mm-hmm.
But if they already had their price set, like why didn't they take the 4?
Because there's no rhyme or reason to anything that they do.
But here's, and I'm not questioning you.
Bureaucratic BS.
What'd you say?
Bureaucratic BS.
Yeah. Because the person said, well, they're gonna do anything and everything to show that to get the return. Well, they had it.
Yeah. They did,
Insanity.
but that's gone, right? So every cycle starts over. Makes sense?
But if you're the listing agent, wouldn't you go back and say, wait a minute, 30 days ago we had an offer at 400. Why don't I go back to them and tell them that we'll do it for 390? Why are you going to take 350?
Because it's not my decision.
Well, no, I know it's not your decision, but it
But
is
why
your
would
pocket,
they do
right?
it?
You're making a commission, a percentage. It's not a flat rate, correct?
There's no
But
logic.
they won't listen to it.
There's no logic at all.
It will make you crazy if
Well,
you're,
it's I mean, someone used the word bureaucratic, but it's actually it's actually not bureaucratic. It's a business. It's not a government. So I'm just saying it's weird.
But it's like,
And I'm not saying it doesn't happen that way. You know, if
It's
it
not
comes
logical.
down
There's
to
no
that,
logic at all involved.
if it comes down to that, then yes, by all means, you know, I'll call the people back myself and say,
Right.
hey, you know, are y'all still interested in $400,000? I mean, that happens. It's not if they're going to take it immediately.
Oh.
You know, the thing that'll really drive you nuts on this is you got a $400,000 house, right? And your asset manager does their price reductions in 32-day increments, right? And your MSR, your update report, your update BPO, little tiny one, you know, is due every 30 days. So you hit the 30-day mark, you submit, 2 days later you get a price reduction, but you receive an offer. So let me break this down. Friday you got an offer. No, let me break it. Wednesday you got an offer, okay?
What's the price?
So $400,000, and Wednesday you got an offer. Doesn't matter what the offer price is,
Right.
okay? Friday your MSR is due. Monthly statistic report, right, is due. So Friday you submit your deal, right? And you're on the 30th day on Friday. Monday morning, you get a price reduction through your email. Your property's listed for $400,000. Let's say you have an offer for $395,000. Okay? Monday morning, you get an email to reduce to $375,000. You have an offer for $395,000. You have 24 hours to reduce the price. So you go in and reduce the price to 300 and whatever I said, $375,000, and you got a freaking offer for $397,000.
But if you have 24 hours, why don't you go back and say we have an offer for $395,000?
Because they've already seen the offer. It goes directly to them.
They already know about it.
And you have 24 hours to reduce the offer. So you reduce the offer to $375,000. They got a $397,000 on the table, and they try to take the $397,000.
It's the case of the left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing, and you still got to move forward with time frame.
It's all a task-orientated business. All you do is follow tasks. A task comes out, MSR due in 10 days. You do the MSR. Price reduction comes through, you go to MLS, you reduce the price.
I'm with you, there's no logic to it, and it will drive you batshit crazy.
Yep.
Well, I mean, especially,
I don't know. Yeah. Well, it is weird. All right, so making an offer, and let's get through this. What is typical time frame for? These are the questions that you want to ask if you get a hold of somebody. Typical time frame for offer response. Are there any offers on the table? How many? Always I'll ask that question. I would say with anybody, any listing agent you talk to, if there's any offers on the table, you would be surprised at how many people just start regurgitating information. They're not supposed to unless they have permission from the seller to talk about the presence of any offers or no offers, right? Okay.
Don't hurt to ask.
But they'll just freaking start telling you anything you want. Any inspection reports, surveys, or appraisals available? If they say yes, then request a copy of that and stuff. Because sometimes they'll give them to you. Not often, but sometimes. Are utilities turned on, obviously? If not, can the buyer turn the utilities on for inspection? That's very, very important. If you're in a house and there's no utilities on and you have a conventional or FHA or a VA loan, it's going to be virtually impossible to get a freaking loan, right? So you want to find out if you can turn the utilities on. Okay, even if it's in buyers' names for 3 or 4 days just to get inspections.
I usually ask if they'll turn it on first. Like
Yeah, you
VA
can.
loan, they will, but
And I'll save you a little step there. Typically, if they can be turned on or the seller is willing to turn them on, they're already on. Okay? If they can be turned on or the seller's willing, they're usually on already.
now at this point by seller, it's the bank,
The bank.
right? I mean, are there banks that won't turn it on?
Oh, sure. Yeah. If it's a safety issue, if it's a dump and they know that, or if the listing agent tells them that the house is going to burn down if they turn the electricity on, then they're not going to turn it on. Okay. Utilities are no due diligence fee, inspection only. So earnest money deposit, that's it. Right? You typically have 7 to 15 days to inspect the property. Inspections are for informational purposes only. That's it. It's an as-is contract. There's 8 pages on the bank addendum that talks about as is. Okay. It's all about the net to the seller. If you remember one thing of today and you are dealing with these crazy properties, it's all about the net.
But you have no way of determining what that is.
Well, no. You just want to provide the highest net possible that your client's willing to do. Right? If you need $5,000 in closing costs, put it in there. Right? Just remember that it's going to subtract from the net. Okay? Make sense?
We actually did handle one this year whose the bank, I mean, it says on MLS, it says in all the information, we do not negotiate. This is the price. We will not fix anything. It's as is. But it was really a crazy situation, and they actually did knock $20,000 off the price. Essentially an $800,000 house that went for $5 something. But then they did negotiate. We did get some repairs, and they ended up though, and that was paying all the liens and all that, but they ended up taking it out of the hide of the agent. So it was something they found that he did wrong, and that agent paid up, and it was just
Yeah.
like, really?
Well,
Now, he wasn't the greatest
No.
agent to deal with, as in completely non-available, but nonetheless, it was
Right.
it was rough.
well,
for him.
the listing agent is the eyes and ears for the bank.
Yeah.
Right. And if they screw it up, then sometimes, unfortunately,
The bank made him pay.
yeah. And if they really screw something up, then they'll go after their E&O insurance.
Just out of curiosity, is that agent located in the Cornelius area?
I don't know where his base is, honestly.
Okay.
I really don't know.
Okay.
We had sketchy information we have phone number and email, and
Wow.
it was,
Yeah.
it was local, but I don't actually know.
Yeah. If they totally screw something up, like, and it's mostly repairs. Like, if the AC doesn't work, if the HVAC system doesn't work, if they know about it, then sure, right?
Mhm.
If there's an 8-foot hole in the roof and they know about it, they can still sell it. If the property's dripping black mold from the walls and you can see dirt in the crawl space, and I have a caution tag in front of the door, you can still sell it
Mhm.
all day long. But if they don't know about
Don't
that,
discuss.
that's when the shit really hits the fan, because they haven't been able to do their marketing package correctly.
Who's the bank?
The bank.
Well,
Yes.
and the one that Al and I did, there was a shit ton of repairs that had to be done, that they advised the buyer of. Buyer still brought the property, still
Yeah.
had all the bills, used the companies pretty much that didn't know, but inadvertently contacted the same company that had given the bank the estimate, and it was mold remediation.
I have a question about that. We put an offer in on a foreclosed house. This is VA again, that, they said they wanted the repair money, the money they would agree for repairs, put into escrow to be done post-closing. But the lender for my buyers said, no, we're not doing that. We're not gonna approve a loan so have you ever run into something like that, and how do you deal with that? Like, VA didn't wanna do the repairs, but they were willing to have money. put in
Yeah, I
escrow.
would have probably talked to another lender.
Yeah, that's a lender.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's more of, I don't know how to say this. That's not an excuse. There's a solution to that,
Mm-hmm.
right? What probably was making the underwriter nervous on that was that there were other things that is the whole open the can of worms thing.
Yeah, there was
You know.
potential issues with boundary, like a part of the property being over the boundary
Yeah.
line. So there were some other issues.
So
going on
title
too, but-
issues and encroachments, and
Mhm,
that freaks people out because they can't get a clear title policy.
mhm.
But I have done them before where you get multiple bids, right? And you submit all the bids. This is where the buyer agents really earn their money on these things. Really, they go out and get bids and blah, 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 and we package everything together and we submit it to the lender. They have to submit the inspection report, unfortunately, but they do, to justify with the underwriter that if these repairs are done, then everything's gonna be okay, right? And the attorneys will hold it in escrow, as long as it's okay with the underwriter. And it's usually very, very tight escrow terms. I'm
Mhm.
talking like 60, 90 days,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes the loaning person, the mortgage company that's doing the loan for the buyer, will make the escrow agreement, put a revision to the loan company after 90 days, right? So if for some reason it takes 90 days or longer than 90 days, then they want the check to come to Guy's bank.
Mhm.
So that Guy's bank can be damn sure that those repairs are done on their property,
Mhm.
right?
I think that was part of the problem too, because the buyer wanted to do the repairs himself.
Yeah, that'll
And
never
then
fly.
I was like, you can't do that. You have to hire out.
I thought with the VA with the VA loans that the repairs had to be done before.
This was a VA foreclosure. So the VA owned the property. that had been foreclosed on. It's not,
It wasn't a VA
it
loan.
wasn't a VA loan.
Right, because with the, if you, I mean, you can't bring a VA buyer to a foreclosed property.
Sure,
That needs,
if they're in good
that needs
enough shape.
repairs though, a health
Yeah,
and
if they're
safety.
repairs done now.
No, right, because they have to be done before the loan closes.
Yeah, and there are no repairs that are gonna be done by a buyer on an REO property before it closes.
Right. And the bank's not gonna do.
Well, the banks will do it, and don't sell that too short either. I mean, if you negotiate an as-is contract and you've been into the inspection, right, and the roof is shot, well, you aren't planning on that, you know, or the AC doesn't start, you know, or I don't know, there's some kind of electrical issue, or termites, you know, or mold, or whatever it may be.
Right.
You know, those are things that we can't really tell while we're negotiating. You know, we can see scratches on the wall, we can see the floors buckling a little bit, we can see this needs a little bit of paint, you know, or maybe the refrigerator's dirty or something like that. Those are givens, right? Right. But these big ticket items, sometimes you can negotiate that stuff, you know? I mean, if you're in a fortunate enough position to where those don't have to be done prior to closing in order for the people to get the loan, then you have a better shot at negotiating a price reduction. Okay?
Now, but as the listing agent, wouldn't you have already known that all those problems existed and priced it accordingly?
Sometimes yes, and sometimes no, right? Well, it's the God's honest truth. That's why the banks are exempt from disclosure.
Example, mold can develop. There was no
Yeah.
mold at the time of the listing, but the
Bingo.
listing's been on the market 8 months. We
It's
had
sitting there.
5 feet of rain, crawl space, mold, moisture.
But in general, when you're doing VPO, you're including the fact that it needs a new, let's say things.
Yes,
against
oh,
it.
absolutely.
You're including all of that, and they're
Yeah.
taking that into consideration when they're pricing the property.
For the most part, yes. Yes. I'll include the kitchen faucet. You know, it needs a new kitchen faucet. The windows, the this, the that.
Now, there was one foreclosure over on Norman Island,
Mhm.
100 Norman Island, whatever, over
Right.
there. Anyone see that house? This was like last summer.
Yeah, I remember.
Did you go in it?
Never,
Did you go in it?
I did.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I
there
heard all
were
about
like, I don't know, like pudding cups or Jello cups, like hundreds of them, empty in the house. Like it was so creepy, freaky.
I heard it was
And they
really
were-
trash.
That should have been removed.
The trash in that house, and in the pictures you could see the trash.
Oh my God.
It was insane, like an unflushed toilet. Like, it was so disgusting. I was like gagging walking through there, and then those pudding cups or whatever they were, yogurt, I don't know what they were, but I just was like, all I could see is like 10 little kids living there like by themselves.
Oh.
And I don't know what was going
Yeah.
on, but it was just, and I'm like, why did somebody not even clean it up?
What I was gonna say, when you're saying you would check the SIC, you would do all that, but think about how agents are. Just like doctors, they're not all good, right? Like
Yeah.
like I wouldn't list a house like that, even if it's not foreclosure, whatever. I look at pictures and go, why would you leave all this stuff in the kitchen?
Well, and the other thing
It's
too.
an agent.
Uh-huh.
It's people. Don't you think?
Well, but
Yeah,
sometimes
the other thing
or
too
is
is
it the bank though? Is it's the bank that owned that? Would they be like, no, there's, you know, we don't, I don't know, we're not cleaning, they wouldn't,
Depends.
they wouldn't expect you to do it by yourself or pay for
Well, I
it.
don't do anything.
No.
So you would
Don't
leave
touch
it.
Oh, hell yeah. I don't touch any of that. No way. We hire people to do that.
No,
so
but
they
I
contaminate.
didn't hire someone,
yeah.
that's what I'm
You
saying.
hire
The bank has what's called the servicing company is what I was referring
Right.
to. The people
I
that
didn't mean
maintain
you.
the
I
yard.
mean, you
the-
get your garbage bag out.
No, but you would make
Right,
sure,
but I don't have allotment to go out and hire somebody to do
Oh,
that. I have to submit it all for approval, and if they approve it,
So that's
then I
the
can go
thing.
hire somebody to do it. But if they don't approve it, then it just stays.
why would they not approve it?
Again, no
Why
logic.
Why would they paint one wall and not the other wall?
Yeah.
That's the craziest thing I've ever seen.
It proves the painting of one wall, but not the other.
All right, so let's get through a couple more of these, and then we should be done. We're doing good. Y'all are hanging in there. But as y'all can see, we're gonna need another class. All right, okay. All right, so bidding on auction property, this is not at the courthouse steps, right? And there's a lot of this stuff going on, okay?
So is this my situation?
This is your situation,
Oh, yeah.
okay? The first thing you want to do is if your client contacts you or if you find a property at auction.com or Hudson and Marshall, and that's all written down for you in the back of this thing, right here for you. So don't worry about writing that down, okay? First thing you want to do is figure out the terms of the auction, right? A lot of these auctions have a 5% buyer premium. Sometimes the advertised price, even if it's advertised in the auction and in the MLS, may not be the reserve amount. Okay, if you're dealing with an absolute auction, if they get $2 for the house, they sell the house. If you're dealing with a reserve auction, they have a set period or a set number that they're going to have to get for that to clear. Okay, make sense? So download any and all documents available to review with the client. Know the difference between absolute auction and reserve auction. We just covered that. May not be able to access the property. Again, a lot of times these foreclosure attorneys are throwing these things on auction.com, Hudson and Marshall, and all these places. They're not foreclosed on. Okay? Do not access those properties. It will say at the bottom, property is occupied. Do not access property. Criminal trespassing, this, that, and the other. Okay? If you can access the property, because sometimes they'll put them on these sites and they know that they're vacant, right? Then they'll put a lockbox on it. You can call in and get an access code. Typically, it's not through showing time, but it's through some other source, and they'll give you the lockbox code. They'll verify your license, verify your name. What they're doing on their computer when you call these numbers is they, my license is George A. Wimberly IV. Tell them my name, tell them my license number. They're going straight to the real estate commission site. Pull your information up, you log it in the system, they give you the access code, you get in the property. If you can't access the property, then utilities are usually off. Again, you always want to find out about utilities. Always want to find out about utilities. There's usually a 5% buyer premium. Your commission varies unless listed on the MLS. You need to understand that. If the property is listed on an auction site and not listed on the MLS, right, there's no guarantee on your commission whatsoever. That's why you have to have very tight wording in your buyer agency agreement if you're going to represent people through this auction process.
What do you mean by the 5% premium?
So if you're the auction companies will typically take a 5% premium. So if your winning bid is $100,000, the actual price to bring to the table is going to be $105,000. Right?
And there's no commission unless it's on an MLS.
Sometimes they will offer commissions on the auction sites. It's typically like 1% or 1.5%, right? If you find a property that's on the auction site and on the MLS, and that property is advertised at a 3% commission on the MLS, then you get the 3%.
Do you get the 1% too?
No, you just get whatever is advertised on the MLS. Okay. Bidders usually wait until the last minute. Do not do this. I can't stress this enough. If y'all are messing with this auction stuff, if you've got somebody who wants to make a bid on the property, put the damn thing in there, right? Don't wait until the last minute. Because sometimes, and this is not the norm by any means whatsoever, but sometimes if the auction expires in 5 days, right, and they hit their reserve amount or that bank gets what they want, right, they can take those offers. They play by their own rules, right? So don't wait. If you got somebody who wants to submit, and then monitor it. Obviously, auctions are pretty cool because 90% of the time you can see what the next bid is, and the next bid, and the next bid, and the next bid. They typically operate in increments of $2,500 or $5,000 or 5% or whatever thing. So if your initial bid is $100,000, it may take $105,000 to get to the next level. Okay. If you are a high bidder, and this happens a lot, just remember this. If you are the high bidder and still don't meet the reserve, a lot of times the seller rep will reach out to you, right? If you're right on the cusp, a lot of times they'll reach out to you and say, hey, you're at $100,000, right? The reserve is $105,000. You think you can do $105,000? If you say yeah, you got the property.
Do you have to be an agent? Can a regular person?
No, regular people can do it. Some sites you have to be an agent. Hubzoo, I think you have to be an agent. auction.com, I'm 50-50 on that one, whether or not you have to be an agent. Hudson and Marshall, you don't have to be an agent. So, anyway,
So they'll do the paperwork for people?
there's no paperwork to do. So what happens is you're working with real estate agents, your buyer agency agreement, all of the terms of your buyer agency agreement, the sample form of the contract and all that stuff. They use their own forms, their own contracts. And so they send all that to you.
And that's including like if there's a repair or whatever.
Now, if you buy a property at an auction, I can tell you within 99% on this one, you buy an auction on a property, there's no repairs, there's just nothing. Period. You are buying it in as is condition.
No inspection,
Unless-
is there an inspection period?
Sometimes they will give you an inspection period, but most of the time, no. And it'll say in there, right?
Yeah.
No inspection. It took us 2 phone calls and a download to figure that out. And it literally said it in red print, no inspection period. That means 100% as is.
However,
However, see, this is the rhyme or reason.
so
So
the
what happened?
agent, oh God, Lord help me to say this quickly. Okay, so the agent, it went off of bids, like where you can't even make a bid. And we were going high, it went off, and the agent said, finally, after 7 emails, 6 phone calls to him, whatever, says, just send an offer, email me an offer. Do you want some inspection time? Even though it said no, we'll look at it, he says.
He must not have had any other offers then, or not.
It was on, being bid on, and I told you that it was being bid on, and then it went off, so now we're waiting to hear back. We did a strong offer, even saying we don't care about the inspection anymore, any of that. Now he's saying, well, now just go put a bid in. Well, guess what? It's not even on Hubzu to put a bid in. And this is the agent telling me to go put a bid on Hubzu. But it's not there. So I've gone to like the escalation department. I've called
Right.
Bank of New York Mellon. Nobody knows. And it's still not on.
So did you send it directly to the agent? Okay,
He writes back, received.
perfect. Then he has to figure out how to present the offer, because once you present an offer, we all know this rule. Once you present an
Has to be
offer,
presented.
he has to present it. And let me be clear on that too. If you are dealing with one of these properties, one of these REO properties, and one of these agents says the seller's already accepted an offer on the property, and you're on the site, ResNet or Equator or whatever, and you see that make an offer button, I don't care what they're telling you. If you can make an offer, make a friggin' offer. Hit that button as quickly as you can and open that portal so that you can get your offer in there. If they tell you that they've agreed to the terms and the buyer has signed off on everything and they're just waiting for seller's signature, but that make an offer button does everybody know what I'm talking about? We all gone through that before? If that make an offer button is in there, you click that make an offer button and put your offer in there.
And they still got to present it.
On that case, it'll go
It goes
directly through the
direct,
system.
Right.
But on this case, if he's responded, it's all about communication. If he's responded that he's received your offer, then that offer has to be dealt with. So you have to demand either an acceptance or a counter or a rejection in writing from the seller. I would have never said that.
So I asked him, where are we at? And he writes back, I think he caught himself because he said, I never received that.
Oh,
Oh, shit.
He already said he received it.
Oh, you got that in writing.
It's insane. The only reason I'm here is because I have a client who wants to buy this house, and they are clients I've had for 5 years, and I work with their whole family. I would not. I joked with you, maybe I'll do that. I'm not doing it. It's only because I've got a client who wants it, but I might have another one. And I don't want to tell them no.
All right, so let's get through this. So searching for REO, here's some of the sites that you can use to search for REO. ResNet or Special Proceedings at the Courthouse. Obviously that's pretty easy to navigate that system once you figure it out. ResNet, Equator.com, Home Steps is Freddie Mac, Home Path is Fannie Mae. Let me tell you a little heads up about Home Steps and Home Path. Home Steps and Home Path will advertise properties on their site as coming soon. That's not our coming soon part, okay? That's their internal site. If you see a property on coming soon and your clients are very, very interested in it, go ahead and reach out to the listing agent and find out. Sometimes it may be on the market within a couple of days or it may be a couple of weeks, right? But always reach out to the listing agent and see, because a lot of times, you may be able to get in there during the coming soon period, if that makes any sense, with an offer or something or whatever. But it's not our coming soon. Okay, that's just a separate deal with that. We have no control over that. HUDHomestore.com is the HUD Homes. Our NAID number is EXPRLT, and then the digits. I'm not going to say it because we're recording here. But if you need a HUD account or if you want to register with HUD to bid on their properties, it's a very easy process. You go to HUDHomestore.com. Up in the top right-hand corner, you click on register bidder or something like that. It'll take you through the process. You put in the NAID number, your license number, when it expires. There's a couple of security questions, and it asks for your name and phone number and all that stuff. Click submit, and you've got a HUD account, right? So then you can bid on HUD properties if you have clients that are interested in that. I can tell you, I ran the numbers. There's 2 HUD properties available in all of our Yale County as of today.
How many?
Well,
2.
Oh, two.
They're not.
All right, Hubzoo.com, typically listed in the MLS that must submit offers through Hubzoo. That's the one that Molly's talking about. Nothing against Hubzoo, but if you have to cut your teeth on Hubzoo, it's probably one of the most difficult platforms out there.
Let's always ask you, which one of these is the
Hubzoo
is the best?
Not much challenge.
No, I was to say the best.
Easiest or
The easiest would be ResNet, Equator, Home Steps, and Home Path. The absolute easiest one is HUD Home Store because you don't even have to do freaking paperwork. You just put it in there, log in, type in the information, get on that road. Hudson and Marshall is an auction site. They're fairly easy to do. You need your, in any of these transactions, you need a buyer agency working with real estate agents and all that stuff. Hudson and Marshall, you just put the information in there, and they take care of the filling out the contracts for you and stuff. Auction.com used to be fairly easy. I haven't messed with auction.com in a long time. Realty Bid is a very, very, very small auction site. I think they charge like a $300 buyer premium or something for Realty Bid, or they were before. Zone, www.xome.com. Zone, I think they have a feed, like a third-party feed from the MLS, because there's regular properties on there. If you look up at the top and click the auction button, that's where all the short sales and foreclosure, pre-foreclosure, and auction properties are in the Zone thing. They do charge, I think it's a $175 technology fee out of your check as the buyer agent to process the file.
Yeah, a lot of times they'll say on the listing, if your offer is accepted, then you owe this fee. So that the listing agent is making the buyer pay the fee.
If it's closed,
Yes, if it's
right?
closed. Yes.
So if it's accepted, you still have to close on it before
Yes,
they can't just charge
true,
it.
true, yeah.
And then the other thing, any bank name with Oreo at the end of the search. So U.S. Bank Oreo, Oreo, SunTrust Oreo will direct you to their site where they advertise Oreo property. And then some of the attorney sites as well, Shapiro, Brock, and Scott seem to be the main ones. And then we were going to talk a little about being the listing broker for corporate clients. We talked about that a little bit. It's kind of strange. Once it's in your system, you can't do without it. Yeah, it's like
It's an addiction.
Like a
it's crack.
How often are the homes only on one of these websites versus being on the MLS?
I don't know. I don't know, it could be up to the auction day or past it. You know, the safest bet is when they're on the auction site and on the MLS.
Now, at this point, the title's been perfected, correct? Up to this point.
All right, so let's talk just a little bit about that. We got a few more minutes. Okay. When you're a client or you buy an REO property, you're getting a special warranty deed. All right, so real estate 101, right? You've got general warranty deed, special warranty deed, quit claim deed. And then there's some kind of other trustee deed or foreclosure deed, whatever they call it. All right, general warranty deed goes back to basically, correct me if I'm wrong here, so jump in. Goes back to the time when property existed, right? And make sure that there's no clouds in the title, any kind of funky stuff going on, right? Okay. Special warranty deed is a specific time period, right? So when the bank takes over the property or owns the property, they're going to warrant, for the most part, that time period that they've been involved with the property to give you what's called a merchantable title, right? So if your client buys it on a Friday and needs to sell it on a Monday, you know, Saturday, whatever, merchantable title, you should be able to do that, okay? The caveat with that is that they're not going to warrant anything that they don't know about, okay? That's why you get title insurance. Even if your client is paying cash for these properties, you still get title insurance on the property, okay? Because if Joe Blow's plumbing shop didn't file their mechanics lien until they found out the property was going to foreclosure, right? And that property goes on the market quick, and 60 days later it's sold, closed. Joe Blow's lien shows up 120 days later. He's going to come knocking on the door and say, "Hey, I got this lien on the property. You know, we bought it as a foreclosure." Right? Well, I don't care. You still owe me the money. You own the property. You know, this, that, yeah. That's where your title insurance policy would come in. Okay? So a lot of cash buyers don't think they need a title insurance policy, but they really do, specifically for those reasons. Right? That's why it's so absolutely 100% important for the process of your clients to read the bank addendum, right? And if they have any questions on the bank addendum, they need to go to their attorney. You are not to interpret the law, especially on bank addendums.
But the closing attorney will do the title search and do all of that
Yeah,
beyond the special warranty deed.
yeah, they should, but you have to have that conversation with the closing attorney or the buyer's attorney. Yeah. All right, so let me really screw you up. So a lot of times you'll see if the buyer chooses to use the seller's attorney, that the seller will cover some of their closing costs or there's a reduction. So what's happening with that is that the seller's already done their title part when they took the property back into foreclosure, okay? And they're doing what's called a reissue rate, right? So they're reissuing, let's say that they pay $1,200 for a title insurance policy, right? They're reissuing that same policy that they got for $800, so they take $400 off the title. Right? Even if you agree to use the seller's attorney as the closing agent on the property, as a closing attorney on the property, that's fine. You can still, buyers can still hire their own attorney to navigate them through the waters here. That attorney's just not going to close on the property. So they can hire their outside attorney, look at the documents and make sure that they're.
But if the buyer's attorney, whether they have to use the seller's attorney or not, regardless, I mean, they hire one,
Right.
that finds that there's a fraud on the title prior to the special warranty deed time period, they don't have to buy it, right? If it doesn't get cleared up.
Depends on what the bank addendum says. Most of the time, there has to be clear title for the property for the title insurance policy to be given. Right? Okay? But sometimes, and it'll say in the bank's addendum, what they'll cover and won't cover. Thank you all for coming. What they'll cover and won't cover. Sometimes the buyer has to pay that stuff. Play by their own rules, right? So like excise tax. Fannie Mae doesn't pay excise tax. Fannie Mae is a government security exchange. They don't pay excise tax. As an argument on every Fannie Mae file that whoever gets closed. Because the buyer attorney is saying the seller has to pay the excise tax. Fannie Mae says we don't pay the excise tax. So then the buyer pisses and moans about the excise tax. Like it's $200 and price $2,000, whatever it is, right? The buyer pays the excise tax. Period. Set it in the thing. Right? That's why you have to read that addendum. And if you have any questions, it just happened to me on this property in Cindy Lane. I got multiple offers on it. Damn thing's been on the market 520 something days. All of a sudden it hits the magic realm. Bang! I got multiple offers. Guy calls me, want me to guarantee that he's going to get his earnest money. The buyer calls me, want me to guarantee that he's going to get his earnest money back if he terminates your inspection and all this stuff. I'm not guaranteeing anything.
The seller has the right to refuse.
Yeah. And if you have any questions, then contact your attorney. I am not going to answer any of your questions.
Or so he came to you on his own, he didn't have an agent.
Oh, he does.
But he just
But he
circumnavigated
his
the
own
agent.
I don't have a problem.
I have a plan.
I called the agent. Told her that we had a conversation. But she goes, I knew he was going to call you.
I have a client like that too.
I know.
But yeah, that's fine. And he had some concerns, but I just pointed him to his attorney. Just ask them. What else? Anything else you can think of?
How do you get to be the person that they call?
Oh, yeah.
How do we all steal your job, Al?
What's the real secret?
All right. So how I got into this. Yeah, we got 5 minutes left. All right. So when I lived in Colorado, I had a buddy who owned a bank called Mountain States Bank. It was a family bank. He was the vice president of the bank. And every once in a while he would call me and say, we've got this property that's going in foreclosure. Can you help me out with what real estate? So that's how I got a little taste of this world. And there was probably 4 or 5 of those, throughout a 5-year period or so. When I moved over here in 2005, I built up a little bit of a network with Wells Fargo and U.S. Bank because they're out in Colorado. And I was doing mainly BPOs for them and a couple of listings, but nothing real big, nothing portfolio-wise because there just wasn't that many of them, right? So when I moved out over here, I told them, and I only had 2 contacts back then, right? I told them I was moving to North Carolina, and both my contacts said that you can't service any properties for 1 year, right? Because we know that you're moving to a new state. You don't know shit about the market over there. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's fine, right? So I moved over here and didn't really do a whole bunch. I mean, I did some conventional buyers and sellers and stuff like that for about a year. And on day 364, I started going through all my contacts again and saying, okay, I'm ready to go. So as I built more contacts throughout the process, I did BPOs, okay? And I did BPOs until my eyes bled. I did 1,400 BPOs over a 14-month period. 1,400, okay? And my deal, let me stop that first.
Requested BPOs are on your own to kind of renegotiate.
Anything and everything,
establish a relationship.
right? So when I first moved over here, right, I hired attorneys. I would pay them to explain the foreclosure process to me, right? Before I even contacted any of my other people, right? Because North Carolina, I moved here from Colorado. I grew up in Louisiana. I don't know anything, right? So that's what I did for about 8 months straight. Holmesley, Goodman, paid them. Ben Thomas and South Bend, this, that, the other. I learned anything and everything I possibly could about the foreclosure process in the state of North Carolina, right? Shapiro and England, just go sit at their office until they talk to me, right? So once I got all that settled, then I started contacting my people and did BPOs. But my deal was that I'll do a BPO for you, okay? But I want you to tell me that I'll get a listing from you, right? And if you want me to do one BPO to get a listing, or if you want me to do 20 BPOs to get a listing, at least I know what I'm dealing with. I don't really care about the $40 for a freaking BPO. That doesn't really bother me, right? But I'm going to list a bunch of these properties, and I want to know, damn, you're going to give me a property if I do a good enough job for you. So that was my commitment to them, right? And that's what I did. And I went and talked to anybody and everybody that I possibly could. You can Google it right now. You Google BPO REO list, right? And they're going to have all the banks and the asset managers and all that stuff. And you go and register, right? And I registered for thousands of these sites. RoboForm, right? If you'll use RoboForm, it keeps all your logins in there and all that stuff. And you can put your information in there as an identity. You can autofill these forms. And I would start at 6 o'clock in the morning and I would work till 7 o'clock at night, right? Just filling out forms. And my wife would fill out forms until we just couldn't do it anymore. And I'd do BPOs continuously. Some of them I'd get paid on them, some of them I wouldn't, right? And the way I treated the BPOs was that was my interview, okay? For the possibilities of listing either that property or any property with these people, right? So a lot of agents would, if your BPO turn was 4 days, 5 days out, whatever, they were handing stuff in on the 5th day, right? I was handing stuff in on the 2nd day, right? Because everything that you do in the REO world is graded. If you ever see these systems, and I'll show it to you guys the next time you do a class, there's a red button, or a green button, a yellow button, and a red button, right? The green button means your task is okay, you still got some time. Yellow button, hey, you're getting close to the end here. Red button means that your task is overdue. You never want to be on the red button. You never want your task overdue. Everything that you do in this business is graded. Everything. From your list price to your sales price ratio, from days on market, from your expenditures on preparing the property for sale, your response time to offer, everything. There's like 50 different key point indicators that they grade you on. And you literally get an A, B, C, D, or an F. If you get a C for 60 days straight, you're gone.
I just think it's funny that they track all of that and yet they
Yeah.
screw it over tens of thousands of dollars with price reductions and not accepting offers. It doesn't even make sense.
It's a different audience that's looking at the things. It's investors on that end, and here it's just employee, people, contract workers.
So I did all the BPOs and all that stuff, and then I started getting some listings, and then that was a whole other ballgame. Do listings and do the BPOs. So now you're doing BPOs and listings, and then you want to transfer to listings only. So as that time went on, then I got a few deals under my belt, listing-wise, for some of these national companies, big companies, Fannie Mae and SunTrust and Mosaic. Then you go to kind of the next level. And the next level is that you've been able to say, I've sold a few of these properties, here's my track record. Then you start joining other organizations, right? REO MAC, NRBA, the National REO Brokers Association, right? Then you play in the big leagues. So the National REO Brokers Association is a membership, and I got out of it years ago. But I'm probably going to join back up again. So let's say that hypothetically it was $1,400 a year to join, right? As the top 1% of REO brokers across the nation. You couldn't just buy your way in. You had to be vetted. They called asset managers you worked for and all this stuff. So I joined the NRBA and rose through the ranks there to be the master broker for the state of North Carolina. So I was in charge of the top 1% of REO brokers. I shouldn't say in charge. I was the liaison between the top 1% of REO brokers in the state of North Carolina and the banking industry, right? So if a bank needed to find somebody in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, I don't know where that is. Way the hell over there. Right? That's one of the things I would help them do, right? So then you join that organization, you join another organization, join another organization, and you just network with all these people and continue to grow and grow and grow and grow this thing. You know, I used to tell people when they'd come in my office, I had Wimberly Properties, long time ago, right over in Mooresville, right by the Chick-fil-A, you know, Rolling Hill Road. Always kept my door locked. It was probably about as big as this right here. I had 5 offices in there, and I had 2 or 3 agents that were working there with me. But I always kept the door locked. People would always beat on the door. Why is your door always locked? Look what I do. I don't know who's walking in here. You need somebody pissed off 2 days ago before we shot. So anyway, that's how you do it. And there's going to come a time where they're going to need, you know, I would say probably right now. You know, you never want to be behind the wave, right? Because we used to always joke around, if you weren't an REO by 2010, you ain't getting it. You know, and that, all honestly, that was probably 100% correct. If you weren't in serious by 2010, the chance you get it. Because in some ways, there is some truth to the myth that, you know, the REO brokers did protect the business. And it wasn't necessarily that we were protecting the business, it was that the clients were protecting the business. So if they had 4 or 5 people that they were working with on a steady basis that were doing a good job for them. And when I'm talking about doing a good job, I'm talking about doing an exemplary job with no issues, no failures, no mistakes, no nothing. Because there's 5 people standing right behind you. If you screw it up, they're going to put number 2 in.
What do they usually, how do they pay? What are they percentage wise?
Oh, so it's usually, and everybody's EXP, right? Okay. Usually 2 to 2.5% on the list side. For a long time, they were paying 3% to buyer agency. I don't really think that dual agency on an REO property is right, because of given the knowledge that I have about you know, there's no way that I can represent a seller's or buyer's dual agent. So I'd say maybe once or twice that I've ever practiced dual agency, and it was only because maybe the friends of mine or previous investors. The commissions are structured. There's no, you know, if you sell it yourself, we'll go down to whatever, you know, percentage. They pay the same commission no matter what. So there's really no reason whatsoever to try dual agency as far as I'm concerned. That's where you get the real buy. The other thing too that I missed is material facts on REO, on any property have to be disclosed, have to. And you should ask what material facts are available. For some reason, I got to write that down, but I've got one right now where there's a water leak in the bathroom upstairs, and I'm not 100% sure that the property is going to be able to be de-winterized without repairs. And I've told all the agents, you know, as long as you disclose, or as long as they disclose the material fact to you, fine. The bank doesn't have to repair it, right? So if you, and here's another kind of myth, but it is the truth. REO brokers or any listing agent that's going to be listing these bank-owned properties do not open inspection reports unless the bank asks you to send the inspection report over. Okay? So if you do a property and you prepare a repair request addendum, and your client says send over, or you think send over that inspection report, and they have, because now everything's a material fact, they will delete the inspection report, period.
Because they don't want to know.
They don't want to know. The banks don't want to know. Right?
But if you send
If
over
a
the
listing
report-
agent sends an inspection report to a bank, there's about a 99.99% chance they'll be fired.
That what?
They'll be fired immediately.
The listing agent sending inspection report.
So when you're,
The listing
when you're
agent
pricing it and you're doing it based on the condition of the property, you don't tell them, I mean, you tell them, well, it's based on the condition and that's it. You don't tell them what specifically.
No, you tell them exactly what it is. That you
Just
know.
don't give them the report.
No, well, you wouldn't receive the inspection report until the property was under contract.
So you're just.
Oh, you mean the buyers? But didn't you say that the listing agent does their own inspections?
No. Sometimes the banks will require an inspection to be done, but that goes to the bank, it doesn't go to the agent. So they'll hire their own people, or you'll hire their own people, and those people send it to the bank. That's why they're exempt from disclosure.
Because the agent doesn't know what's in that report.
You
so
don't
they-
know.
But how are you supposed to price it?
You don't. You just deliver the data.
So
They
when
do
when
all
you,
the
when you're
work.
doing your
When you're doing your
BPOs,
BPO.
are you doing it based on it being, if it's, assuming it's in average condition?
Yeah, that's one line item, right? So if you remember when you're running comps, right, your subject remains the same.
Right.
And if your comp is in average condition, you got a subject in average condition, you got a good comp, right? You have to adjust down so that they, right? So that may be a $10,000 adjustment for condition.
But you don't know the condition because you didn't get the inspection.
No, I don't care about the inspection. I just care about what I can see.
What you
But
said.
you're not, how would you know? You're not an inspector, you're an agent, so how can you even?
Well, it's no different from you guys going out to a listing presentation, pricing property. It's the same thing. It's a CMA, right? So if you're sitting with your client, if I'm going out to list Guy's house and Guy and I are looking at the comps, right? I got them all in front of me. You know, Guy's house, beautiful granite countertops, this and that, and all this stuff, and this comp over here is, you know, Formica countertops, whatever. Well, it's not as nice as Guy's house, right? So we do an adjustment. So if Guy thinks he wants $250,000 for his house, and this property sold for $200,000, but it's not as nice, well, we got a little room to play with, right? But if the other house sold for $300,000, then we do our adjustment, just like any listing presentation.
Thinking at the beginning, when you said I go out to do a BPO, and based on the condition from the, I think, isn't that kind of what you were thinking?
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking that if, like, the house over there on
Yeah.
Norman Island that I was talking about, I mean, holy hell, like, it was just looked horrible. You could imagine that the roof needed to be replaced, the HVAC needed to be replaced, like, there, that's what I'm saying. You could just assume based on looking that everything did, but
Well,
you didn't
yeah.
have an inspection.
And there's no assumptions in the RO world. It's black and white, period. So if the HVAC needs to be replaced and it costs $10,000 to replace the HVAC, that's just a line item, right?
Right, but you would make that assumption at that point without having an HVAC.
No, you would have the HVAC inspected, and the contractor would say it needs to be replaced or it can be repaired. Then you would make your line item off of the repair or the replacement.
You just.
So it's up to the bank, right? So I had somebody buy a house, foreclosure from the bank.
Right.
Had a listing agent, and it was in disrepair. There was a hole in the roof, it was leak in the floor, there was a hole in the floor.
Right.
There was just, it needed
Mess.
a lot of stuff. There were 18 offers on that house within
Sure.
2 days. So it was obvious. So the bank could have said, well, I mean, it was in such bad condition. They decided, I'm sure, to just sell it as is. I mean, it's just sold as is. There was no disclosure of anything. but they can decide if they want to repair or put in a new AC unit, depending on what they want to do, or they're trying to get a higher price.
All right, yeah, so what you're talking about is the as-is
Yeah.
repair. Okay. So let's say I go out to a house and I know for sure, not assuming, I know for sure that the thing needs a new roof, it needs new air conditioning, it probably needs carpet, you know, and some paint on the walls would be really kind of cool, you know. All right, so you have your as-is and your repaired values, okay. On the top of the as-is and repair, there are lender-required repairs that you expect, right, to get top dollar for this house if you're going to suggest that it be sold in repair status, right? You have lender-required repairs, and then you have non-lender-required repairs, okay? So in my brain, I'm looking at this thing and I'm thinking most probable buyer here is FHA or VA, given the price range, right? Most probable buyer is FHA, VA, and it's probably going to require carpet in the rooms, and it's probably going to require the over quarter-size holes in the drywall to be repaired, and all that kind of stuff. So you would list those as most probable buyer, FHA, VA financing, right? Suggested lender required, could be lender required repairs, to be repaired. So $500 for drywall repair, $1,500 for new carpet, blah, 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 on down the list. $5,000 for a new HVAC system, $5,000 for a roof, whatever it may be, okay? And the asset managers, the banks, they look at that and they say, okay, according to the comps here, because they see all that stuff too, you know, they look at this, it's a lot of data that goes into these matrices here, right, to figure this stuff out. They look at it, and every one of the properties that's sold has been FHA financing. Okay, so then they're looking at it, oh, you know, maybe we should repair this to at least lender standards, right? So they'll go in there and fix that stuff, right? When you list that out, you know, it could be as is price $100,000, as repaired price $150,000, estimated repairs $20,000. Okay, it would be very difficult for them not to absorb that $20,000 repair to make an additional $30,000. I mean, that's yeah, with anybody selling.
But then you have to get all the vendors out there.
Sure.
Do now you have to pay for that up front?
Sure. Yeah.
So the 20 grand you have to work out?
Sure. You get reimbursed.
Well, I know. I'm saying.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's what when I tell people, you know, they come in, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this. Like, you need, back then, you need 100 grand, unaccounted for money. You know, you get a property from 15 properties, you know, that you got to turn on everything and do repairs and all this stuff.
Now, do you put it on the auction sites too?
I don't do auctions.
Do the banks expect you to?
No. They can put it on the auction site, and I can put it in the MLS as long as I advertise it in auction. But I don't go to the auction sites.
Oh, so if it's in the MLS and it's also on an auction site, it has to say that?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So, anything else? Y'all want to have another class about this?
Do you still get paid if it's on an auction?
As a listing agent? Yeah, sometimes.
Good to see you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Sometimes, they're pretty scary.
That would be bad if you put all your money and you get paid back.
Do what?
If you put all that money out there and you can't get reimbursed back, you know. Well,
They reimburse you. It's
Okay.
just.
Thank you very
You
much.
said something, but I'll think about it and I'll call you sometime. But thank you. That was
Sure.
really good.
You think so?
Thank you. Appreciate it.